How you guys doing? Martin Lopez from Men's Breakthrough Hangout. Super. One of the things that I was thinking about last week after I got off the Facebook live is that one of the strategies that men use is giving advice. Because I had a bunch of text messages from people and they were like, "Hey, do this, do that." They're trying to give me advice, and that's good. And for the most part, I find advice that I get good. Like mostly it's good, mostly it's true. It hits the nail on the head, all that. But advice when it comes to men giving advice to each other, I look at it like it's something that we do to make us feel better. Like, I'm going to give you some advice because I want you to feel better. I don't want you to feel as bad about something. So in relationships, when it comes to relationships, when we give this relationship advice as men, it's like, we say things like, just get over it, or like the phrase that's not so nice, like, she's just a bitch, get over it, right? And some, oftentimes that's great advice, like that's great insight. Yeah, she is a bitch. I should really get over it, But the problem is that I talk to so many men, and that we actually experience pain, So like in the middle, like I'm talking to somebody and they go, "Yeah, she's a jerk, or she's a bitch or something. You should just get over her." And it's like, well, yeah, I should, but kind of like I'm in love with her, So the advice, although it's good advice and like, yeah, you should just get over it, the experience of actually being able to use the advice is often not so easy. So I thought about like what is the thing that we experience as men? And let me kind of go, I'm a little dramatic sometimes. So I was thinking, it's darkness, it's pain, right? So we go through a divorce, we go through a tough breakup, and we've had pain, we've had darkness, we've had these arguments, and we've had our dreams not come together the way we want them to come together. So we get to a point and we say, okay, I want to start rebuilding my life. I need to start rebuilding my life. So if I take that advice, like just get over it, and I start just doing something, it's kind of like I'm going to build a house on top of a bad foundation because I didn't clean up the mess I was in. Now, I didn't clean up not only the mess that I had with the other person, but my own personal mess, my own residue, the stuff that's left over for myself. So in rebuilding my life, I think, yeah, I want things to be better, but I can't ignore the pain and I can't ignore the darkness. So I'm going to bring on two really good friends of mine, and we're going to talk about this. So, hey guys, how you doing?
Hey, glad to be here. Glad to be here, Martin.
So today, so Barry and Bryan, today we're going to talk about how to use the darkness and pain of your divorce or your bad breakup to rebuild your life. And I'd like to say if we could stay focused on that. And last time and this isn't what you guys were, but we kind of veered off. And I want to try to stay on topic as much as we can. So that's the thing: how to use the darkness and pain of your divorce to rebuild your life. So first off, Barry, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody, and then I'll have Bryan introduce himself.
Sure. Wow, put me front and center.
As you see, Barry show.
Yeah, right. So I'm Barry Selby. I'm a love and relationship expert. I got a book out. I coach men and women around relationships. I'm an inspirational speaker and spiritual guide. And to be totally transparent, I've never been married. I've been in relationships, but never been married because I either, one, didn't go through with it, or secondly, was wise enough to back out before I did. Still to be decided. But I've also become very expert in what causes relationships to dysfunction, why they work, why they don't work. And Martin and I both went through the same grad program. That's how we know each other. So that's why I'm here.
Awesome. Barry, so happy to have you here. And you don't have to be like the greatest quarterback to be the greatest quarterback coach, or you don't have, it doesn't require that, because insight is a really cool thing. So I know when I invited you to come on, you said, but I've never been married. And it's like, yeah, but pain is still pain. Rebuilding is still rebuilding.
Absolutely.
Breaking, having a relationship that gets dissolved, whether it's a friendship, whether it's a girlfriend, a boyfriend, whatever, it's still, there's still an experience, and there's still something we want to work through, right? To rebuild.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Thanks for being here, brother. So, brother Tarr. I call Bryan. His new name is Tarr, man.
I love being here. Bryan Tarr, CRM pros, helping the businesses to be able to take their relationships and make them profitable. One of the things that brought me here was the divorce that I went through. There's a book that I'm the future author of called Love Beyond Walls that came through that whole divorce process. So Brother, I know about the darkness. I know about the darkness.
I'm going to have you keep talking. I'm typing something.
And
So,
I love this subject of the darkness, because diving into it, we're taught most of our lives to avoid the darkness. And the more I tried to follow that advice of avoid the darkness, kill the darkness, it just got worse. And in my case, really, really, really bad.
Yep.
And only after that, I began to learn from people much smarter than me to not only embrace the darkness, but leverage the darkness. I would have never imagined that I would have ever thought those words would have came out of my mouth.
Yeah, that's cool. I want to hear about the leverage the darkness. That's really cool. Yeah, like leverage it. Okay, cool. So, so Barry, what are your thoughts? Like right off the top, like, the whole concept of using, your darkness and your pain to rebuild your life.
Well, and so echo what Bryan was saying. In fact, to underscore what he said, most of us aren't trained or educated like you should face the darkness. Most of us like get over it, just stuff it down and move on.
Yeah,
that was a bad experience. You'll be fine. Get some beers, you'll be fine. Get on, go on your date. That's the way we're raised. That's the way men are taught.
Yeah.
And all the other stuff about men, you don't be a sissy, don't cry, that man up. We get raised that way when we're kids. So as adults, we think, oh, that's the rules I've got to follow. And so when we go through breakups, to have emotional expression is so the antithesis of being a man as far as we think.
Yeah.
So we don't face that. So the darkness is something we avoid, not because we're scared, but because we're not trained how to face it half the time. And so we just settle it down. One, just to reference, Barbara DeAngelis, who created Making Love Work many eons ago,
mm-hmm.
She said something once. I had a lecture years ago. She talks about how when we go through breakups, you imagine that our love is like a wide ocean. But when we go through breakups, it's like icebergs being put onto the ocean. And if we don't deal with the breakups, the pain, the wounding, the darkness, we keep adding more and more icebergs to the ocean. So eventually the ocean becomes smaller and smaller and smaller, which means that the loving you get to give is smaller and smaller and smaller because you blocked it by the darkness. So your ability to love somebody new is limited by how much darkness you haven't resolved yet. So, and that is true for what I get, because oftentimes what happens, we go through breakups, our loving is now interwoven with the darkness we faced afterwards, or the darkness we feared comes up. And so the loving we have to give is being, how can I put it, stockpiled with this loving that we can't give at the moment because that love is too painful to share.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, literally speaking, we're painful. After a breakup, we want to love, but we're scared of the pain we're going to get if we love again because we got pain last time. So this whole like short circuit happens.
Look, I know what happens here. I know what happens here when I start going out with somebody. I know how this is going to end.
Exactly.
Yeah, cool. Bryan, what are your thoughts?
I think I wish that I had a mentor, brother that could have advised me a long time ago to embrace that darkness. I think in the tribal days, you would have gone out with the men, and the men would have said, okay, here's a staff, here's a knife, go. Lions, there's tigers, there's bears. You make it back, we'll be right here. And you learn to face your darkness really, really, really quick. And you have those men that you're like, I'm so scared, and this is hurt, and this is darkness. And the men teach you to face your darkness. In our society, we don't have that kind of thing. We have to go through it. A book that I read that somebody told me before I go dating again, it was called In the Meantime by
Iyanla
Thank you. Yep.
We know Iyanla.
She's also a graduate of our master's program too, but which is
She's
dear
in my
friend.
class, yeah.
Yeah.
That book, In the Meantime, says between your last love or your last divine love and the next one is the time of growth and the time to rebuild your house of love. And when I went through that, part of that taught me that if I don't deal, like Barry saying, if I don't deal with this here, I'm going to carry it into the next relationship. And now that I understand this, if I don't deal and understand my own darkness, that darkness is just going to go with me into the next relationship. And it's going to do some damage because I'm not knowing how to manage the darkness, not knowing how to leverage that gives me a weakness and gives me a problem. I just transparently ended a 14-year relationship with somebody because I wasn't facing my darkness, because I wasn't doing that. And I finally came to a point, I had good friends pointed out to me that I wasn't happy and I was sabotaging everything else.
Yep.
And I was avoiding dealing with that. And so with love, I ended the relationship because there's no way I could have maintained that relationship. And that was my ownership of that. And it was time to go face the darkness. It was time to go take that. And I'm reading the book by David Goggins, Never Finished, to take that darkness. And there's great power, he says, in that darkness. There's great power from, man, Martine, you're doing amazing. Thanks, I appreciate that. Barry, you're amazing. Thanks. There's power in that. But there's even greater power in leveraging our darkness.
Yeah.
And I'm just beginning to understand that. And if anybody can deal with an attaboy, and it helps us out. But if I can leverage my darkness and I know it and I own it, then I'm going to be ready for any kind of relationship because I can face anything.
That's cool. So let's talk about like entry level darkness, because the darkness doesn't have to be so heavy, it doesn't have to be like, oh, it's so significant. It's like, it's because I talk to guys every day, I'm talking to, 3 or 4 guys every day, 3 new guys every day. And so many don't even know there's a darkness, don't even see it as a darkness, Right. It's just what's so like, this sucks. Like, she did this or I did this. I can't get back. I'm not going to let her back. There's all these stories and it just appears like it's what's so, and it sucks, but there's like, it's not like darkness. It's like, it just sucks. It's like, it's a way of contextualizing it, and we're calling it darkness here.
Well, let me put it another way. It's like getting a dent on your car and not knowing to go to a body shop.
Say that again.
It's like having a dent in your car and not knowing you can go to a body shop, meaning that your car still drives, life still goes on, but every time you look at it, you go, "Ooh, that doesn't look good."
Yeah. Well, and then you actually get used to, you stop seeing it also eventually, right?
Exactly. You get used to it. Yeah. That's really what it is in a sense. It's just a matter of you go, "Oh, that thing again." And the thing is, what you said earlier is that when you have that darkness and it's not resolved, it does impact every part of your life. It's not just relationships get messed up, how you deal with life, because it's almost like you have this background hum that's numbing you to what's really available. So what you're saying, Bryan, about embracing the darkness is part of that is you start to realize how much bigger you really are and how much you've been hiding stuff away because you weren't willing to face it.
And Martine, you were talking about like entry-level darkness. I think if I was to think about the entry-level darkness, now that I know about it, it was, I'm not happy.
Interesting.
It was, I really don't like her. It was, I don't know what's going to happen next.
Mm-hmm.
It was, I'm in way above my head, and I hate this, and I don't like this, and I've got to fight for my life. It's really wishing harm on the other person, that you're so angry at this, and it's that person's fault. That's, I think, some of the entry-level darkness.
Yeah.
She should have, she could have, I deserve better. I didn't realize that was like entry-level darkness. Scared, fear.
Yeah.
And it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until you face it. And sometimes it gets so big you have to face it because it's life-altering situations. But the entry-level darkness is that, maybe it's that emotions, it's that fear, that anger, that upsetness, that sadness that we don't even deal with. That there's something in here. We think we're bad people. We think that there's something wrong with us. And so we're like, I don't need to deal with that. I just got issues. I got to work on this, or I got to find something cuter and hotter, and that'll help me get over it.
Yeah, I my version of entry level darkness is it's kind of like what Barry was saying. It's exactly what you're saying, but I'm just going to say it a little differently. It's the things that I don't notice. It's like I got scraped, and like, that really doesn't bother me. Like, and I think what we do is as men, we do it as women too. Women do it as well, but I'm not speaking for women, I'm speaking for men. So I think what happens is we learn how to deal with stuff. Like I learned, like I know how to deal with being broken up with. I know how to deal with disappointment. Like I know how to deal with not feeling loved, but I don't call it not feeling loved. I don't call that. I don't say the entry level. So there's the entry level. Watch, I'll explain that. The entry level is not that I don't feel loved. The entry level is you don't love me.
Yeah.
That's the entry level part. That's kind of like where we judge and we blame and we accuse. So I'm going to say you're the one with the problem. And the what I'm really trying to say is I'm hurting and I don't feel loved. I don't feel loved. And then when I really start to look at it, I've got to be willing to go deep. And eventually it for me, it was, man, I don't even have self-love. Like what am I expecting somebody to love me? I don't even have self-love, and that was a tough one to, it wasn't a tough one, but it was, it was a tough one to swallow when I first heard it. Cause I didn't even see that I couldn't even see how it connected to me.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, these are, and things that we talk about. I think the one thing that I find when I'm talking to men is we'll talk about something, but it doesn't connect. The people don't connect with what we're talking about because they don't have the experience at the level that we're saying. Like we're saying, okay, so it's self-love. And it's like, no, fuck that. No, man, she's just a bitch and she doesn't know how to love. Like, but at entry level love, right? And entry level, this level, that makes sense. It perfectly makes sense. That's, oh yeah, it's like that. And it's like peeling an onion. You got to be willing to peel the onion back, right?
Yeah, the level of basic we're talking about is that it's easier to throw stones out than take them in. And so we're in a different space between blame and shame, in a sense, because during that darkness point, like you were saying, Brian, it's like, you're dumping on the person. It's like, oh, it's because of them. I'm fine. It's them that caused the problem, which really is kind of like ignoring the stone in your shoe because you want to make sure they feel your wrath, your upset, your judgment. But that's all vitriol that's inside of you anyway. One of the things I learned from USM was that judgment is something we hold inside for somebody else. It doesn't change them, it changes us.
Yeah.
But we don't look at that. We simply go, oh, I'm fine.
So say that differently, because I explain what you just said again, Barry. Like judgment is something we hold for somebody else. Like I get that, but
yeah, well, like the old quote, like the definition of resentment is like taking poison, expecting the other person to die. That's the mindset, because what happens is, no matter how much we're upset we have with somebody else, it's inside of us. The other person doesn't necessarily feel it, especially if we don't talk to them. We don't talk to them again, so we push them away. So they don't know we're upset. They don't feel upset. We think we're putting it on them, but all we're doing is stirring up our own dysfunction inside of us, our toxins inside of us. So we're hurting ourselves by doing it. It doesn't help anybody. That's the true dysfunction of the darkness, when we're not using it as growth, but we're using it to berate ourselves.
I like that. I'm trying to think of a different way to say that. I'm trying to think about using your metaphor of the car, like it's like, so it's
almost like using your car to hit their car, but you're damaging your own car in the process. That's
not
quite right.
Yeah. Okay. I think we can work with that. Okay. Cause I like metaphors. Okay. So it's like, okay, so my car's screwed up.
Oh, I got it.
Okay.
This is the thing. How many times have you been upset and you decide to go for a drive and you race the engine to get your engine and you get your upset out of your system? You drive down the streets, do crazy stuff. Your car's getting hurt by doing that because you're over-revving the engine, you're wearing out the tires, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
It doesn't solve anything. It doesn't affect the other person. But meanwhile, your car is in worse shape because of you doing it. Does that work as an analogy?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's the same thing. It's like, the person gets upset, they go for a drive, and then they get in a fender bender, and they come back, and then they get mad at the person that's at the house. Like, man, I got a car accident all because of you. It's like, hey, you were there driving, It's like,
they weren't even there.
Yeah, I wasn't even there. Like, yeah.
That's like you've got a dent on this. You've got a dent on the back fender. You got a dent on the front fender. You've got a dent on the other side. And people are like, man, what happened to your car? Well, see that back one? This idiot cut me off. He was an absolute idiot. Oh, see that front one? That front one? This stupid woman walked across the street, and it was her fault. See that other one? That was a homeless person. I can't believe that homeless person was stupid. And like, dude, that's your car.
Yeah.
You're the one that created those. Like, no, I'm not.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
Taking responsibility is one of the biggest avenues into the darkness to heal it.
That's cool. Okay, so let's jump. Let's make that jump then.
Okay.
Yeah. So keep going with that, because I was just thinking, let's make that jump. That what we're talking about is we're blaming and we're projecting something over there, but that's the darkness that we actually have inside of
My
us.
first teaching to any client I work with is awareness, because first of all, we got to be aware that things are happening. Maybe we're not necessarily we're doing things, but we're noticing like that's not working.
Yeah.
And so the first thing is being aware of like, okay, how many times have you crashed your car into somebody else because of what's been happening, so to speak? How many times have you thrown a fit about somebody or something that you didn't even know them, like the waiter at the restaurant or the person in the retail store, because you haven't dealt with your own upset, but they said something that just triggered you and you reacted to that. So be aware first. The second piece then is, okay, now you're aware of it. What do you want to do with it? Because it comes a choice. Do you want to simply keep suppressing and avoiding and negating what happened and keep blaming somebody else because it makes you feel better, which doesn't ultimately? And then it becomes the choice of, okay, but then if I want to face it, how do I approach it? What do I need to deal with here? What am I actually telling myself that's not true? Because a lot of we lie to ourselves too.
I think that the challenge is that the step 2 has less satisfaction for a while than step 1.
Right.
You know, like,
Yeah.
So if I yelled at you, Barry, that actually gives me a bigger dopamine rush and more satisfaction than stopping and going, Barry, I just wanted to say I apologize. Because that's like, it's almost like it's grueling, like, you know, and that's like, am I really going to get any satisfaction out of this? You know, am I really going to, is this really going to turn out the way I want to, or am I going to have to sit back and then you're going to tell me, yeah, I told you were an idiot. And it's like, okay, now I got to shut my mouth even more, you know? And I think that like we do the math as human beings. I think as men, we do the math and we go, you know, what's the sum of what I'm going to do? And am I going to get the result I want? Because humility, right? Vulnerability, there's no guarantee.
It's not manly, frankly.
Well, yeah, it's not manly, but you're not guaranteed any satisfaction with those. Right. It's all, you know, you're the one putting it all in, you know, and until you can connect, like this is like, that's like, I use the form like, that's like me. I'm a kind person, or I'm a humble person. That's like me. And I do these acts, and then I can take a moment and celebrate myself for my own personal growth. Well, there's the real growth, but that's not easy for people to do because people don't do that. The satisfaction is in the yelling and blaming and complaining.
Absolutely.
I think like judgment and criticism have become cool, have become acceptable. And know that a lot of times when I'm hanging around a lot of guys, judgment and criticism, we like spark each other on. And we judge and we're like, and we spark. And it's actually cool and fun to stay in that, which takes us so far away from responsibility.
Well, the other part of that too is that men, unfortunately, we are trained, bred, raised instinctually being competitive. Yeah. So we're always one up each other and want to be stronger. So finding a tribe like what you're doing, my team with your work, finding men that can support each other and be honest with each other, but also hold a space. So if somebody's not up to their full standard because they're going through grief, the other men can hold for that. That's not common, unfortunately. It's needed, but it's not that common yet.
Yeah. Like, and it requires a different level of effort. Like I'm going to have to put this effort that's like, it doesn't feel natural. It doesn't feel, it's incredibly satisfying. Like when, you know, men go through the class and, you know, the course and everything, they're like, wow, that's really cool. But like, that was tough, man. I wouldn't, if I knew what I was going to have to go through, and so I wouldn't do the class, you know. I knew I had to listen to that and think about that and consider the things. Like, I'm glad I consider that, but I'm glad I'm on the other side of the, you know, through the eye of the needle. Yeah. You know what I mean? So there was something I wanted to, you were saying something and I wanted to point something out. Forgot what it was.
We'll come back.
Oh, shoot. Yeah, it'll come back. Well, you were just saying something a minute ago, Barry. Like, you remember what you were saying just a second ago? God, it was really cool. It was something built off of what you were saying. Oh man, sometimes I stopped writing. I write notes.
So think about the basic back to think about, because again, being competitive as men, we don't find other men we can trust. That's the biggest piece, by the way. Trust between men is really hard to find because usually it's tied to some sort of intimacy, and men are like, shit that. No, thank you. Because we think intimacy means sex, you know? Yeah. So the reality is finding men that we can trust to hold emotional space for each other. That's a gift. And it is rare. It is uncomfortable because most men aren't familiar with this. I'm lucky enough to have been in the personal development field for almost 40 years now. So I've learned that it's okay to put the walls down. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to find men that actually hold me when I'm upset, and find for me to hold other men when they're upset. It's actually a gift. but it's not common. Again, it's something that unfortunately we don't have enough of, that authenticity yet from men. Being vulnerable is the antithesis of being a man sometimes, it feels like.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be macho and manly and hold it all together and be strong, because we've been told that's what we're going to do, is to hold the world together. We're going to hold it up by our shoulders. So to show vulnerability would be against our own function in a way. So it's a
So let's jump to the next part. That's 100%. That kind of made, that's what I was wanting. You said that the other thing, and okay. So how do we use that to rebuild? Like how do we use
finding trusted men?
No, how do we use? Well, yeah, that's definitely one. But I'm thinking, how do we use the pain? Like, so I have my own version of what I think it is. Okay. But I'm interested in what you guys did to rebuild. Like, so Barry, had a breakup, upset. What did you do? Like, did you have some steps? Did you use? Did you actually go back into the pain? What did you do? And then and Bryan as well.
I know better now than I did then, to be honest.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
Initially, the feeling was just of being like hopelessly lost, because I thought I know what I was doing, and I totally obviously wasn't, because there were two realities, or I should say two experiences. One was what's really happening, and what I thought was happening weren't the same. So that was the first discord in my life. The second part, though, and it took a while, because again, having these skills helps a lot, is I got to look back at my last couple of relationships, and I noticed something very interesting, that I did the same thing 3 times. And it wasn't about them. It was all about me, which meant that I had a leverage at that point. That's the other part too. Oftentimes if we have a breakup, we don't think we have leverage to be able to do anything about it. But like, well, I got to move on. I don't know what happened. Something happened with her. It wasn't me. I'm just going to move on. But when we stop, and awareness is key, to look back and go, okay, what happened? And I noticed in 3 relationships, I did the same thing. Only this time, the last one of these 3, she told me what I did wrong. Not necessarily lovingly, not very kindly, but boy, I'm so grateful. And it's funny because of her, I do this work. I teach this because of what she not because of what she did, but because I got the clues after we broke up of what I need to do differently. And that put me on the path of the whole masculine and feminine conversation. I didn't even know what it was up until 2006. And so for me, there was a gift that came out that was much bigger than the journey. But at the same time, it was the reflection. It was all about me, in the sense it was my focus, because I realized it was what I didn't do or did do that I need to work on. And that was the leverage point, because I realized it was all in my domain.
So I'm going to ask you, I think you're answering it, but I just want to be real clear. Okay. So you said, you found yourself lost. Then you noticed that there was a pattern. Because
it's like, there was a part of me that basically is going, what have I done wrong again? Because that was the wiring in my head. And I did have back then some limiting self-belief, to say the least. And so I was looking for the fault that I made, I caused. How did I break a heart? What did I do wrong? How did I screw up? And thankfully, I have a smarter part of myself that was like, look at this and this and this. It was really like my own awareness that showed up saying, this is the thing you did to the last one and the one before that. And it wasn't the breakup. It was the way I was in the relationship. It was the way that the relationship happened. And I mean, I write about it in my book about how that piece was such a pivot point, because it gave me the gift of what I do now. But of course, at the time, I had no clue that was going to happen. But it had to be that point where I said, okay, what is it that I didn't do or did do that can change? And also, carrying the upset, that's, again, I thank my USM skills, because it really gives me the chance to look at my own self-processing, self-facilitation, to work through the emotional pain. I mean, that's one of the gifts that we got from USM.
Yeah. So I heard that as, so I'm gonna change the way I said that then. So it was lost. You were lost, and then you looked.
Yeah.
And then you found something. You found something. And then the last part.
That's the distilled answer, yes. Yeah.
And then the last part was that you and this is what you said. You go, I said, and then you then said what you said. So I'm going to apply that to myself. Okay. Let me see. I think Woman. Hey, Woman, you there? He's driving. So let's see. He's driving.
Yeah, but the reception is a bit funky.
Okay. Well, we'll try that. We'll hope it works here. So okay for me. So look at my relationship. So I felt lost because things weren't going in the way I wanted to go. And then I looked and said, okay, this is, and then I started to notice things. Wow, this is what I noticed about myself. And then at one point I said, I'm going to change. And then as I'm like looking what to change, there was only one thing to change. It was me.
Yeah.
There was
That's the
only
answer.
one thing to change. Yeah. So that was the. I'm trying to see if basically what I'm trying to do is look and see what you did the same as what I did. Like how is it similar? Because if we can figure out the steps, then we can deliver the steps back to men and say, okay, yeah, these are the steps. You're going to go through this process. Like I understand my process, but I'd like to hear other people talk about their process.
Well, ultimately, the thing was for me is I had to start working on the relationship with myself before I worked the relationship with anybody else. That was a big aha, big change, because I had so been outwardly focused, outwardly referenced, so that to be in a relationship with somebody was more about them than it was about us in some ways in my wiring, because I didn't show up fully. And so to really start looking in the mirror with authenticity, yeah, the self-love is the easy panacea, but it's not just that. It's about the self-regard, the self-respect, the self-support, all these different self-reflective skills that we don't spend all the time developing. And so for me, it was about building up a relationship with myself, that I trust myself, I respect myself, I take care of myself, I honor myself, and I say no a lot more than I used to as well. That's one of the big things for me, because it changed the way I treat the world, because the relationship inside of me changed.
So then it's like, I'm going to use the word set. So then you set. So then you set kind of like rules or I'm going to govern myself or something like that.
Yeah, boundaries, rules,
boundaries. Okay.
Agreements. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So, this is what I was going to say. So in the earlier, what I was going to say is that in the process of these arguments we get into and these fights that we get into, somehow we make these agreements. This is why this is actually fits into this. What I saw was that I had made agreements. Now, I didn't make the agreements with my wife. However, we did live inside of an agreement. Like it was okay to argue. It was okay to point fingers. It was okay to blame each other. Like, and although and this is what happened. She would say to me, she's like, it's okay for you to do this. And I would think, no, no, I understand I do that, but I'm not, it's not okay for me that I do that.
Mm-hmm.
But we speak in this language, and the language, I think it really explains the person's belief. Like her belief was I was doing things that I was okay with, and I wasn't okay with some of the stuff I was doing. When she pointed it out, like, no, I'm not okay with that. I just don't know how to. First off, I don't see it happening when it's happening. Sometimes, right? And then I didn't have a tool to deal with it when it was happening.
Right. And you weren't being coached or supported to stay back in that and to really face that way. She basically was giving you permission to go beyond your boundaries, so to speak.
Say that again?
She was almost giving you permission to go beyond your boundaries, so to speak.
What do you mean? So explain.
Because you had agreements in the relationship, but then when you exceeded them or you went beyond that boundary, that line, she didn't say, excuse me, that wasn't appropriate. So she didn't give you feedback. In fact, she almost accepted what it is because you were doing it. So she almost said that what you were doing was okay because you were doing it, not because it was right.
Yeah, I'm going to say it differently. She did give me feedback, or I did give her feedback. So it was like we started fighting and arguing. That was the feedback. So that feedback wasn't productive,
Right.
So like, Bryan says something to me and I start arguing with him. It's like there's now the situation that we're in is escalated to something different. And then we have to then leverage past arguments to actually make a point. And we're never really making the point. We're never really making the point anymore of what the truth is of what started this whole thing.
Absolutely.
So it could be like she felt disrespected or didn't feel safe. And all of a sudden we're arguing about something like, this is the way you are. And it's like, great. Well, the arguments make sense, but and the arguments trigger more arguments, but they never address the real problem.
Yep.
And that's a problem that I find with, with therapists is that therapists will get you to, like when I was going through therapy, it's like I'd go to, and I love my therapist, right? But my therapist would get me to talk about how I was feeling and all this and that. And I'd feel better. So now that I feel better, I go home and I feel more in love, but I didn't have a tool that when I was back in that situation, and although, like I had a therapist, like an Imago therapist, and Imago is really, really good. Right. But there wasn't a tool to deal with the trigger. It was like, if you can remember this, you can process that argument, or that's a really good tool. And it's really, really works good, except for when my reptilian brain is going, I'm no longer driving, so I'm not really trying to figure out how to like, well, let me see how I can process. Nah, fuck that, man. It's like, it's like it's on, right? And that's how it occurred for me. That's how it was for me.
Basically, it's like, well, the way I was going to put it was you weaponize your history.
Say that again. Weaponize your history. That's really cool.
history. People do that relationship all the time. They weaponize their history.
Well,
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to use that. I have this thing
because
called the
that's the thing.
regressive cycle, and I'm going to use that. Weaponize your
you're
history.
just like my ex who.
Exactly, right there. Yeah, because it's like painting the new person with the old brush, so to speak. Is that thing because it's familiar, it's contemptible, and it is easy. Like you said, reptilian brain. It's like it's a default. It's our instinct level, not our conscious level. Our conscious mind's going to go, "Don't do that, don't do that." Meanwhile, our instinct's going, "Let's do that." It's that duality inside.
Yeah.
So that theory is good. But I mean, when I'm with my clients, what we do is actually trace it back because I know from my experience, when I find out where it started, when that part gets diffused, not removed, but diffused, then the trigger's no longer there. So it doesn't matter what they say. You just go, "Oh, that's interesting." Then you get to participate. But it takes a shift to do that. It's not easy.
Yeah, and I find that in what I teach, the triggers do go away. However, what I teach is in men's breakthrough and in the women's course as well, is to embrace the trigger. Is like that trigger is the prompt. The trigger is the cue.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to avoid the trigger, you're actually avoiding the feedback.
Exactly.
So it's like, hey, you're an asshole, right? Okay. Like now I'm triggered, right? He goes, but that's the cue. That's the cue. And the cue is there's something going on with my girlfriend. There was something going on, with my ex-wife. There's something going on, and they're triggered, and they're giving me feedback. That's the feedback. Now I can take that and escalate it by being defensive, and then I can weaponize my history. I like that one, right? That's my new one. That's my takeaway. So I can weaponize my history, and I'm good at that. I'm really a good
Most of us are.
I will go till the end. I don't care, man. I'm a smart rat.
So then my question becomes: do you want to be right or you want to be loving? Because that's what it comes down to.
Well. At the point. Well, this is the thing. At the point of the reptilian, when I'm a reptilian,
Being right.
I don't give a shit about your loving thing. Yeah, fuck you and your loving thing, right? Because that's the answer of a reptile, right?
Down.
Like the reptiles aren't going to sit there and go, let me see how beautiful your face is. Like, no, freaking, we're going to have a bite, So it's just you're trying to play a game of love and a game and trying to reason because you ask a question. It's like, but I'm not in a reasonable place.
Exactly.
And although your questions are good, if your questions this is a curiosity theory, if your questions don't engage my curiosity, I'm going to stay reptilian. So if I'm giving you a question that's kind of like I'm going to call that like an advice kind of thing. That's how I started. So if I'm asking you a question, so do you want to be right or do you want to be loved? I'm like, fuck you. It's like, what are you talking about? Because that's not curious. That's actually, it's a position. It's like, I'm actually saying you're wrong. You're wrong the way you're doing it versus what we're teaching in men's breakthrough is to actually be curious, like, and say, oh, I'm curious, like I'm really curious what's happening with you because you're yelling at me. I'm really curious.
Well, the question then becomes underneath that is, what do you really want?
I'm just taking a minute to breathe that in. So what do you really want? Yeah. It's like, yeah. So exactly. So you're yelling at me and I could say, so, hey, Barry, do you want to be friends or you want to be an asshole? Right. Like, oh yeah, fuck you. I'm going to be an asshole right now. Right. That's kind of the answer. That's our answer for guys. Right.
Right. Yeah.
And then, but if I get curious and I say, Barry, I clearly said something that wasn't right. So can you share with me what I said? And then you said, what I'm trying to get to is what?
Well, the question is like, what do you really want? Do you want clarity?
So I'm asking you what you really want, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Things it might be saying,
that like, in a different way.
It could be like, say, you never listen to me. I want to be heard.
Yes. Okay.
It could be that simple,
What's the need? Okay. When you say what you want, okay. Yeah. So I say, what's the need? Okay. Got it. Sometimes I need to clarify things because it's like, even though I agree with what you're saying, it's not
different languaging.
Yeah, it's a different language, and it's like, it doesn't really make sense to me.
Well,
and I respect you too much.
Since University of Santa Monica, we both do a lot of work different ways. So of course we're bringing new things to the table. So yeah.
Yeah. Very, very cool stuff.
And it's
What do you
different
think about that, Bryan? What do you got to say about all that craziness?
experience. I think I began the journey with having some emotional intelligence and positive intelligence. And that emotional intelligence and positive intelligence that I learned from other people helped me to be aware. Helped me to be aware that helped me to be aware that what was going on wasn't okay. That was the first thing. What was going on wasn't okay. And then I wanted to do something about it. So I began to apply everything that I knew. I must know something. I must have something. And I started to apply everything that I thought I knew and thought I believed, thought I was trained in, to try and fix the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And it got worse.
That's a clue right there. Yeah.
Yep. Right.
I'm being serious.
There's a clue.
Well, that's the thing. It's like you recognize, like, hang on a second, that doesn't work. Good awareness. Now what? You know, it's the next step.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's now what? So then the next step that I think I took was trust. I needed to find somebody that I could trust.
There you go. Yeah. That's a deep one for a lot
And
of people.
that was the next step. I needed somebody in my life I could trust. Now, the people that I had in my life, I had designed my life for comfort. Everybody agreed with me. Everybody liked me. And I was very entertaining. But I didn't have somebody that I could really, really trust.
Yeah.
And the person that I found that really trusted me, I would talk to him about this, and man, ex-wife was this. He's like, yeah, you're pretty miserable. Like, yeah. When are you going to start taking care of it? Like, what?
It's her
Dude,
fault.
you're the problem. Do you want to go down right now? What do you mean I'm the problem? Like, you're the problem. You can be pissed at me if you want. You're the problem. And they had enough care for me to tell me what I didn't want to hear.
Yep.
I knew I could trust that person. So I started to create people in my life that I could really, really trust. That stacked things in my favor so that I could trust people. Then by having those people, I learned it's time to unlearn. It is time to unlearn. All the stuff that I'd learned in my life, it got me where I am, and it sucked. It was time for me to unlearn what I had learned. And that was painful, and that was difficult and long. Once I unlearned everything, and once I began to unlearn it, I needed new tools. The toolbox I had did not even work. Nothing worked. And I began to look for new tools to help me to deal with this. Now, when I was looking for new tools, I'm looking for a hammer, I'm looking for this, I'm looking for a tool. But I was still trying to fix it and not look at the problem.
Yeah.
And I was just looking for I found a whole bunch of new tools. I did a lot of reading. I felt good. I felt my mindset shift, and I was learning new tools, but it never really got to the problem until I found somebody, a trusted mentor who just didn't give me advice, who just didn't give me ideas, but who pointed me in a direction and asked me to find the solution. And he said, well, try this. Next time that you get in an argument, just shut up and listen. Don't make it right. Just let the person talk and quit trying to be right. I'm like, that's stupid. That's just insane.
Because I'm right.
What do you do? And I'm like, fine. Just because, fine, I'm going to show you you're wrong. Like, so, fine, they're arguing, I'm listening, and I'm like, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to argue. I got this past quiver. I'm going to fire that. And I'm listening, and all of a sudden I heard something I never heard before. And that changed the whole argument. And I went back, and I'm like, what just happened? He's like, and he said, what we began to discover was I had horrible self-love. I had self-hate, and I was loving self-hate. I had self-hate. I didn't trust myself, and I didn't believe in myself. And I never, ever saw that until I had a mentor who had enough love and care for me to show me that truth. Then when I saw that, the next thing is I fell in love with that which I don't know that I don't know. I knew there was something that I didn't know that I didn't know that's going to help me find a fulfilling life. And that began my journey on finding that. And I would find information and apply it. Find information and apply it. And when I found information, applied it, didn't work, out it goes, next. And I began to research myself. And I think it started with self-love. That was the hardest.
Oh, yeah.
I had to learn how to love myself. And at first, like Barry said, I said, is this kind of a homosexual gay thing? Because I don't think I like the other team. Like,
Right.
Brian, no. Self-love.
So funny.
Self-love is the love that you're going to be giving to other people.
I hate
So
it.
if you're not getting the love you want from other people, dude, you're not giving it to yourself.
Yeah.
What? But wait, what? If you're not getting the love that you want from other people, it's because you're not giving it to yourself.
Yeah.
That's gold right there. Yeah.
That broke me open to discovering. So self-love, I began to take care of myself and just love myself. And it was hard and it was difficult. And
It
that
was weird. It's weird.
It was. I'm like, I mean, parts of self-love was like, you want me to like hug myself? Like, okay, nobody else is watching. All right, fine, I'm gonna hug myself.
Not only am I embarrassed if somebody watching, I'm embarrassed that I'm watching me do this. You know?
Yeah.
I'm like, I love you, Brian. I love you. Oh, come on. Like, dude, do you want to learn or not?
Get off me.
Fine. Shut the curtains. I'm gonna be in a meeting, so don't disturb me.
A meeting with yourself.
I love you, Brian. I love you. That was hard. That was hard. And I'm still practicing that.
That's
Then
awesome.
the other breakthrough was continue work with my mentor. Like I was pointing fingers. This isn't working because of that person. This isn't working because of that person. He's like, you're not happy. No, I'm not. I need to find the right person. I need to find the right business. I need to find the right this. He's like, no, I that's not it. Everything you told me, you don't trust yourself. Like, yeah, I do. I'm Bryan Tarr. I'm awesome. He's like, no, you don't. You don't really trust yourself.
Does love come before trust?
Yeah.
I think it does. Yeah.
Because
I went through that same kind of journey that I all of a sudden there was things that were happening. And then I realized like what I wanted to accomplish, the degree of love that I had for myself I wasn't going to be able to accomplish that. Like I couldn't
trust
care
myself
about me
because I didn't
enough
love myself.
What's that?
I couldn't trust myself because I didn't love myself.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know that I didn't trust myself.
That's part of the journey. So again, awareness, you become aware. Wait a second, that's not working. What's wrong here?
I had to have somebody else point it out to me because I was pointing fingers in every direction.
Yeah.
And they knew how to show me that I didn't trust and I didn't believe in myself. And this was on for decades. And it was still hard. I would say, okay, I got this. And we'd work and I'd say, yeah, that's the problem. Say, Brian, we're back to the same thing. You don't trust and believe in yourself. And it was hard. And it's still hard. And I still see it come up that I don't trust that I'm enough. I don't believe that I'm enough. I don't believe that I'm absolutely just perfect in how I am. I didn't believe that. I didn't trust that. And until I got to that point, I was just repeating the same mess over and over and over again.
Which is really interesting. It's kind of like that would be that then becomes the new darkness, right? That becomes the new darkness and the new pain. So my old darkness was this, and I would argue to be right. Well, I'm not doing that anymore. I don't need to be right anymore. Okay, good. Then you go do something. You're never exonerated. Just like it's always going to be work to do. And
my darkness was there's a character in Spider-Man, the alien creature that's black and oozes everywhere. Yeah, Venom. Thank you. Venom. And my darkness was Venom because it could ooze into every place. And then it showed up, the lack of trust and the lack of belief in myself was, Brian, you're a loser. Bryan, you're an idiot. Bryan, you got divorced. They're going to take it away from you again. Bryan, you're going to blow it again.
Yeah.
Who would ever want to love you? Oh,
no, I get that. So let me kind of intersect into that. That's really cool. So yeah, so it's kind of this is almost this you're coming back around to the same place, right? Because you work through what you worked through, and then all of a sudden you find yourself like dealing with, God, I thought I worked through that one. I thought I was good with that one. But what I noticed it is in myself and others is that it's an easier conclusion, and there's more of a willingness to consider what you concluded, and then understand that conclusion isn't true, however it lives true. Does that make sense? It's like, so I conclude things like what I hear you saying is that you concluded something about yourself. It was easier for you to come to that conclusion and then be with that conclusion. It seemed like you knew that conclusion wasn't true. Like, I know this isn't true. However, it lives as though it's true.
It's an easier path.
It's an easier path. And now this is what I'm going to work on.
Yeah.
This is what I'm going to work on. And I think it's kind of like if you had like all this like energy from like self-love and trust and vulnerability, all these things, and they were all, because they're all become skills that you become more skilled in. And all those skills are almost like they point to this thing. And when you're looking at something that you need to work on, this is really cool. So because I'm just finding something about myself. So when I'm working on something, when I can see something I need to work on, right, I can look at it because I have the strength of these other skills, like like I'm more vulnerable. I'm more honest. I'm willing to do these things. So if I find myself as a liar, like, oh shoot, God, I'm lying about that. That's really crazy. I can come to terms with that faster, and I can make considerations for that faster. So it's kind of like
shining light on the darkness is what you're doing.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And it's funny because I talk about this stuff on my Facebook. You guys, follow me on Facebook. So on my Facebook, I'll say things about myself. And then I get these messages from people like, are you okay? And it's like, yes, what I do, like, I'm okay with pointing out like what's so. That's the thing about me. I'm okay with pointing out what's so. I'm not trying to I'm not trying to act like I'm something that I'm not. Like if I feel depressed, that's just what's so. And I'm going to work through that because that's what I'm present to. And kind of like what I was getting from what you were saying, Bryan, but I'm not the depression. It's what I'm experiencing. So if I'm saying, oh, you piece of shit or something like that, like, oh, that's an interesting, that's your venom, right? Oh, that's a really interesting thing that I would say to myself. Yeah. It may feel true, but I know it's not true.
Right.
But it still lives true in that moment. It's still living true. It's living true. And now I have the choice. I then have the choice whether I'm going to feed it or I'm going to starve it or I'm going to, whatever system I'm going to use to address that. That becomes my choice. And that's what I'm going to work on.
That was the next step, because like morning after morning after morning after morning, I'd wake up and anxiety and depression were right in bed with me. I'd kick them out later in the day, but they'd get back in bed with me and they didn't shower and they stunk.
Tell them to shower before you go to sleep.
But please, hey, anxiety, depression, would you please shower? Please, because God, but it was
in a sense that's what you do, though, right? Because when you work on them, then they actually don't show up as nasty, but eventually they will. That's the thing. That's the thing that we have to understand, that eventually it will. Barry Michaels calls it Part X. What's his name? Phil Stutz. Phil Stutz calls it Part X. It's that part of you it's committed to destroying you. There's a part of you that's committed, and it will figure out a way, like your venom. It will figure out a way to come at you. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, this is the key thing, by the way.
Yeah.
That destruction is actually counterpoint to what's really doing. It's trying to take care of you the only way it knows how.
Yes.
We have a cadre, a round table of aspects, so to speak. And some people ignore them, some people work with them. But the thing of what is that everything that's going on in our lives is, well, there's parts of ourselves, so to speak, those different personalities, different aspects. are always doing their best to take care of themselves the way they were trained to do in the first place.
Yes.
The problem is that 90% of them are doing things that are hurting us, but they don't know that. It's like I'm banging their head over the head and saying, I'm trying to keep you safe. That's kind of what they're doing. So when you start to really look at these parts, one of the things work I've done, and things I've done this for a long time now, is through NLP, is giving it a new job.
Yes.
Not to kill off those places. Those parts of you are still part of you. You don't want to kill them off. They're part of you.
That's a badass soldier. That soldier is pretty badass.
Yeah, give it a different job.
Let's do something else because you're pretty tough. Like, why would I get rid of you? You're pretty badass. You know, exactly. If I'm going to recommand you to do this, and because it was something that I commanded when I was 6 years old or 5 years old or 15, and I was trying to solve a problem, I didn't work through it. And it's like, your wish is my command. Like, okay, if the clearing is there, it's like, okay, I'm going to go do that. You know, I'm going to charge and go do that. And all of a sudden you're like, damn, I'm all screwed up. Like, what's going on? It's like, well, you told me when you were 15 to do this. Okay, exactly. Stop. Let's give you a new job. Okay.
New marching orders.
Yeah, resources.
And then I think the next thing that showed up was fear.
We're gonna conclude in like 5 minutes. So you got a lot of good stuff, but we're gonna wrap up. But go ahead.
We'll talk about this next thing. But the next thing was fear, and I was running from fear all my life. But again, with help from the mentor, I started to go into the fear and through the fear. And when I went into the fear and through the fear, I found a whole new strength I never thought I had.
Very cool.
Nice.
Very cool. So using the darkness and the pain. I love it. Using the darkness and the pain. And that, so you use that. So then fear then became your, the way that you built your life. Yeah. Real quick. Say something about that really quick. Cause it's not the kind of thing we want to leave on the table.
Right. With help and with mentorship, I found that when I go through fear, on the other side of that is incredible possibility, incredible learning. And nobody had ever taught that to me. And somebody had to guide me through it. And I'm like, I'm afraid. They're like, go through it. No, I'm afraid. Go through it. You get, this is ridiculous. I know how it's going to turn out. Go through it. Fine. I'm going to go through the fear and I'm going through it. I'm going to do my thing, right? I'm going to prove you. Wow. How did this happen? This is cool. This happened. This was amazing. And you look back and the fear that you went through. I'm afraid of talking to that girl. She's way out of my league. I'm going to go for it. What? That's stupid. Fine. I'm going to talk to her. Hi, my name's Bryan. Hi. I've been interested in you. I'm glad you finally said hi to me.
Surprise.
Right? On the other side of the fear is incredible possibility, incredible learning.
Yeah, because what I discovered from that, like for my own self, is that the person that was afraid did not have the quality of courage being expressed. The moment that you are addressing your fears, the quality of courage then shows up as well. So then as a being, you are showing up as a courageous being. And it's like, that's a different attraction. That's going to have a different effect on people around you. And it's amazing kind of stuff. So first off, thank you guys for being here. Last words, Bryan, anything you want to say? Final words, like kind of wrap up the whole idea of what we talked about.
Yeah, I think Barry being here is evidence of putting trusted people in your life. It's been decades since I've known Barry, but when we were hanging out, we developed a trusted relationship. And here it is decades later, and we still have a good relationship. That's the value of good trusted relationships.
Yeah. Cool. Right on.
Yeah.
Barry, what you got to say, my brother? So good to have you here.
It's such a pleasure to be here. Such a good conversation too. We covered so much. Boy, we all deserve to love ourselves. Many of us are afraid to do so, speaking of fear. And that's because we don't think we're worthy of it. When you start recognizing that you are the person in your life that you have the best relationship with to start with, and it's not gay, it's straight. When you do that, though, this is true for men and women, when we have a relationship with ourselves that's healthy and authentic, we become more valuable, and also we become our best cheerleader. And it's okay to have that. In fact, you deserve it. So take the steps, whatever it is, with a coach, with a book, on your own, with a partner. Get to that place where you really trust yourself again. It's time. We are all needed to be that way in the world, frankly.
Yeah, and how I'd sum it up is, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in this world, and I find a lot of men that are hurting. and they don't say that they're hurting. They don't say that. They don't say, Martine, I'm in pain,
No, they're tough.
They're like, they come pretty tough.
Yeah.
However, the moment that they know that they can trust me, moment that they know that I respect them, the moment that that's gone, you find it, you literally find a different human being that shows up. And so, for people out there that are committed to helping other people, just start showing up more powerfully. I mean, there's just be who you need to be, because people need you to be that. And if you need help, like, reach out, like Bryan says, find a mentor, find someone that you can work with, someone that's gone through it, whether it's Barry, whether it's me, whether it's Bryan, find somebody that's gone through it, somebody that has a path that says, I have a system to get through this, and see if that system works for you. And then whatever it takes to work with them, pay whatever you have to pay to work with that person, because, your life is too important. And in going through the rounds and going through and getting to the plateaus and moving through life is it's a beautiful thing. And having pain is not, it's a requirement, because it's part of life, but it's kind of like an optional thing, like suffering's optional.
Yeah. But pain is not suffering. So,
Yeah. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. Barry, it's like the second or third time you've jumped on one of my shows. I can't wait to have you back again.
Look forward to it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Bryan, as always, man, thanks for hanging out. My main man. I appreciate you being here.
Love you, brother. Barry, it's so good to see you. I'll reach out to you and we'll connect again.
Yeah, we'll talk in a while.
So Men's Breakthrough is what we do is every Tuesday at 4:00, we're going to jump on a call and just talk about, things that men are facing. So I have this on my Facebook page. I'm building this one Facebook page for men, and I'll put it on other pages. Please help me share and help build this page, because the idea is to live happily divorced lives, and you can be married and still live a happily divorced life. You can still stay married. You just divorce the bullshit and then create a new life.
Nice.
Cool. All right, guys. Thanks a lot for hanging out.
Thank you.